Farmview with Kieran O'Connor on WLR.
Brought to you by GlanviaConnect.com.
Hello and welcome to Farmview. Well, as usual, it's Kieran O'Connor here with your weekly farming programme. And once again, I have a very busy show for you this week. Well, in this week's programme, I discussed the Agri-Food 2030 strategy announced last week as new targets for farming are revealed. I'll also have an update on the ongoing very serious situation for the forestry, indeed the timber sectors in Ireland. And plus we hear how the Waterford farmer markets and indeed country markets are starting to reopen.
Farmview with Kieran O'Connor on WLR.
With GlanviaConnect.com, Ireland's biggest online farming shop and more.
Well, last week the Agri-Food strategy for 2030 was revealed. Targets for the farming were revealed last week, and to review these aspirational targets, in many view, are very important targets when it comes to farming and the environment. We were joined from the Irish Farmers Journal by their food specialist and a man expert as regards the whole EU involvement with the agriculture sector, and that's Phelim O'Neill. Phelim, welcome back to our programme.
Hello again, Kieran.
Phelim, the Agri-Food strategy, it's announced last week for 2030. Obviously a lot of aspiration in there, but definitely a lot of areas where farmers have to sit up and take note, particularly when it comes to environment.
Absolutely, no doubt, Kieran. This is the fifth of these strategies, I think, this century that has been produced. Up until now, very much the focus has been maximising the output and the return of Irish agriculture, whilst at the same time, of course, being sensitive to climate and to the environment. This time round, it's a totally different facing strategy. It's a strategy that is prioritising the environment and climate, the air and the water, if you like. The production from our land then will be secondary to that in terms of priority. We would, of course, looking at this through the farmer lens, suggest that parts of the world like Ireland that are natural grassland with an abundance of water, the one way that you convert grassland to human food or food that humans can consume is through ruminant livestock, and that therefore that we shouldn't be as focused on that as we are. But look, be that as it may, it is what it is. We have another 10% target, the 10% that we have to achieve reduction by 2030. Of course, we can develop new dietary methods that reduce the methane and do it that way. But look, as things stand today, that inevitably means less livestock. Less of a focus on agricultural output, more focus on the environment. And that's to sum up the 144 pages, if you like, in the proverbial soundbite.
You mentioned that this was the fifth strategy. Do you feel that they've been a success, and have they helped, as I mentioned in the intro, a lot of aspiration there, but do you feel the last four have really benefited the industry as an overview, looking back?
Yeah, if you look at, we're now at a 13 to 14 billion euro export industry, more than doubled in this century. That has to be a particularly positive thing. Agriculture was very much the pillar on which the economic recovery post the financial crash and banking crisis of 2008-2010, agriculture was the pillar of the past decade that recovery was built on. It serves parts of Ireland very well that aren't necessarily attracting the apples, etc., or the big pharmaceutical areas outside the major conurbations. And in that context, we have to say that it has made a major contribution to the Irish economy. Now, look, the reality is, as we go towards 2030, and the committee that was putting the strategy together, in fairness, they had to work within the constraints of the EU Green Deal and the EU Farm to Fork strategy, which sets pretty narrow parameters in terms of what we can do in the world of agriculture in the decade ahead. So I think the focus now has to be is, from a farming perspective and the government perspective, is that there will be a cost to agriculture and to farming likely out of this. Yes, we have the aspiration that we will gain this great thing called a competitive advantage by being the most sustainable country in the world for agriculture production. The jury's very much out on whether the market is going to pay for that or not. But if the market doesn't reward that with the level of premium that we would hope for, then the reality is someone has to step into that deficit, and we'll be looking there that is the responsibility of government or the European Union. Because don't forget, Kieran, the reality is that Irish agriculture and European agriculture, it is produced to a bar that's higher than anywhere else in the world. The more that we do in this space, the less output that we have, the more costly the production is. And this, if you like, is a building on, and I go back to the time in the late 1980s when the European Union unilaterally decided that they'd do away with hormones in beef production. That made beef production more expensive in Europe than anywhere else in the world, and yet it is a world standard that is accepted there. So if the European Union and through the Irish government need and want this policy of ultra-high, low-carbon emissions agriculture in Ireland, then the cost of that has to be paid for.
I saw a statement last week where somebody mentioned once-in-a-lifetime change need once-in-a-lifetime support. I think it summed it up exactly what you're saying, but the areas being covered, climate change, methane from livestock, water quality, biodiversity, air quality, all very aspirational. But one thing I've found in the last number of years, farmers are very much cued into it. A lot of work going on as we speak when it comes to water quality, biodiversity, and we'd say slurry spreading, and that whole area. Farmers have bought into it big time, and I think a lot of people on the outside don't recognise that, and I think farmers are more determined than anyone for this to work.
Look, they absolutely are, because if those of us that have memories long enough that can go back a few decades in terms of how slurry and byproduct was dealt with, it was a totally different world and a totally different space. So there's been huge progress made, and having said all that, we still have to do more. We can never settle. We can never say that it is conquered. What we're facing with now is actually very tight and specific targets that are simply just going to have to be met. They bring with them the cost, and I think that is the space that we're in, essentially. And what we have to try and reconcile all this with is, and what farmers find particularly frustrating, is that Irish and European farmers will reach these targets simply because they have to. But the reality is we are expected now to go out and sell in world markets, going head-to-head with the production from North and South America, Australia, New Zealand, etc. And we have to go out and compete against those people from the higher cost base that we have. That is difficult, if not impossible in many cases. And then, in addition to all of that, the open trade policy that the European Union has been developing over the past decade. Of course, Ireland has to embrace trade because we're a net exporter of all agricultural produce. But if we look at now that we're opening the European market further to the Mercosur countries, we're in advanced talks with Australia and New Zealand on a trade deal that will give them greater access for beef and sheep meat. Meanwhile, we haven't mentioned Brexit yet, 10 minutes into this chat. The reality is the UK are out doing their own trade deals. They're about to sign off on a trade deal with Australia and New Zealand as well. That is going to mean more product in that market space. So you can see how the produce that is coming off Irish farms is going to have to compete head-to-head more so than ever before. And yes, we have the ambition that we will produce the ultimate in sustainable meat and dairy products from this country. But this $6 million question, will the market reward that? And to date, we have to be honest and say we've seen no evidence of that. It may change over the decade, but if it doesn't change, then there's a financial deficit that has to be picked up.
And of course, the cost there, like to the farmer's business, is way beyond what's available in the CAP and the agri environmental schemes, and I always felt REPS was one of the best schemes that I saw over the last 20, 30 years. And then there's the whole area of afforestation with backlog as regards licences, which I have somebody on the programme this week talking about that whole very serious situation in that whole area. A lot of good work going on, but overview, when you look at the strategy for 2030, what would be your overall comment as regards the aspiration of it?
Look, the aspiration of it's fine. There's no one that, including farmers, farmers think of farm families. They tend to go from one generation to the other. The farmer that's working, that's milking cows today, that's feeding the beef cattle, that's out chasing the sheep across the hill. Those farmers are thinking of succession plans and their sons and their grandchildren farming that land as well. So nobody has a greater interest in protecting the environment and the world's climate than farmers do. It's the same as everyone else, perhaps even more so because they're very much in tune with nature. In terms of strategy, you have to say the aspiration of it's fine. In the perfect world, this higher standard of production that we're reaching towards would be rewarded in the marketplace. I just remain to be convinced that the market will deliver for that. And that's why, I suppose, in the Farmers' Journal that we're looking for, if the market doesn't do this, then government and the European Union have to underwrite it. And you're right, Kieran, the cap goes so far, but only so far. It hasn't had an inflation-based increase in over 15 years. It's very limited what it can do. But look, we've heard great phrases from the European Union on things like the Just Transition Fund, etc. Germany, Poland have drawn huge funding out of that on the basis of having to transition from their fossil fuels, from their coal to a cleaner form of energy. And Ireland, in terms of agriculture is important to Ireland as coal has been to those countries. If Ireland is required to transition to a new model of farming, well then the cost for that has to be met, and farmers cannot carry it all on their own.
Phelim O'Neill, market specialist, Irish Farmers Journal. As always, Phelim, thanks for taking our call. We'll watch this space, and indeed I'll be talking to you, I'm sure, in the next couple of weeks about the whole Common Agricultural Policy, which is moving along as we speak, slowly but moving along. Phelim O'Neill, thanks for taking our call. Talk to you in the near future.
Thank you, Kieran.
Well, over the past number of weeks, we've seen the farmer markets and indeed the country markets this weekend and next weekend starting to reopen. And one man very excited I met at the Dungarvan Farmers Market in the Square is coordinator of the Dungarvan Farmers Market, Simon Fraser. First of all, Simon, you must be really relieved to see business literally getting back to some piece of normality.
I'm absolutely delighted. People are very, very busy. Hopefully it's going to spread to the rest of the town soon, because everybody's very happy to be coming out of this, but also really need to think of the future and crack on, and it's really positive at the moment.
Simon, the stall holders here, what an array of products and farm products and fresh products you have weekly. For them, the farmers market, and for you in particular as well, it's a lifeline.
It's our business. It's what pays our mortgages. It's absolutely everything, and we're very lucky to be able to trade outside, as our other businesses going to have to start doing, which is a positive, and it's basically changing to suit the new situation.
Dungarvan Market on a Thursday morning, you see more and more of your regular customers starting to come back. Indeed, I've noticed more stall holders here and producers here week on week. Very definitely. We haven't everybody back yet, but the majority of traders are back. The public have gradually come out and been very, very happy with it being in an outdoor space. Obviously, we have to keep the social distancing going and all the protocols in place, but in general, it's been very, very positive, and it's great to see the public actually having something to do. We've a great variety in Waterford and a great selection of high quality producers. When you think of the farmers market in the city, the Stradbally, just before we come on air you mentioned how Lismore and Ardmore will be kicking off soon. I know the country markets are open this weekend and next, so great air of positivity indeed here for everyone. Looking forward to hopefully a great summer. Well, very much so, and if you cast your mind back to last summer, once the open air and the weather was better and people were able to move around more, it was almost as if the pandemic wasn't around, but we're hoping as obviously vaccination etc goes forward that'll be even more so this summer. I'm delighted that other businesses and markets are being able to open again, and it's all positive. The same with the restaurants and the cafes. We hope everyone gets their chance. Simon, what would you say to people who are on the outside, who haven't been at the farmers market, haven't seen the variety and indeed the quality of products you have? How would you say to people over the next few weeks as regards the local farmers market, indeed country market as well? I say get down here and have a look. There's so much quality down here. It's friendly, it's cheerful. We don't go down the corporate road, so it's very much local, personal, and the quality is absolutely top notch. Well, definitely judging by the buzz around here, and before we finish, of course, you've got great support from the council and all the various institutions as well. I think that shouldn't be forgotten. We really have, and thank them very deeply. We're delighted. Simon Fraser, listen, well done, keep up the good work. Great to see the buzz around Dungarvan Farmers Market. Here's looking forward to the rest of our farmers market opening to full throttle over the next few weeks. Exactly, thanks Kieran.
Farmview with Kieran O'Connor on WLR.
With GlanbiaConnect.com, Ireland's biggest online farming shop and more.
Well, a few weeks ago on our programme we spoke to Minister Pippa Hackett about the whole area in controversy as regards the whole afforestation and indeed the whole felling and harvesting of timber and the licensing problems that's causing, not alone to the forest industry but of course to our huge timber industry as well. So to get an update on the current situation, we're joined from Euroforest by Paddy Bruton. Paddy, thanks for taking our call.
Kieran, good to talk to you, and thanks very much for having me on the show.
Paddy, as regards this whole area, I spoke to the Minister recently, and I spoke also to Darren McCullough from the Farming Indo there also a couple of months ago. The very serious situation that's out there. You might briefly summarise what's happening as regards the felling licences.
The felling of trees is licensed by the Department of Agriculture, that you must have a licence to enable you to fell trees in a forest. Unfortunately, there are now licences lodged with the Department of Agriculture that are there well in excess of 2 years, and that has created a huge backlog. The department did put a project plan in place last June to try try and deal with this backlog. Unfortunately, they haven't hit 50% of their own targets in reducing this backlog.
And Paddy, just one question. Is the backlog because there isn't enough of staff in the department, or is there a deeper issue here, a more serious issue?
I'm not convinced it's a resourcing issue here at all. I'm not convinced of that. Ireland are the only country in Europe that has this problem. And you have to ask yourself, why is that the case? So I'm not convinced it's a resourcing issue.
As regards the whole area, obviously it's a huge important area, and more so now with the whole 2030 strategy and the whole area of biodiversity, afforestation, and indeed the forest sequestering carbon. Trees have such an important role now more than ever. But for farmers who are out there hanging and depending on getting a felling licence, because without that, literally to the outsiders, a guy can't go in and just strip out his forest without that department approval, and I think that's important to mention.
It's very important here. You can't fell without a licence, right? So, right now, the facts are this. We are achieving record prices for timber for farmers at the moment. Quickly record prices. I can say that without real contradiction. And that's caused by a number of factors, I suppose, really. First one being, in an Irish context, our licensing situation. People that have a felling licence at the moment have a valuable document in their hand, and they're scarce. That's in an Irish situation. On a European situation, sawn timber is scarce throughout Europe, and roundwood, as in conifer roundwood, to produce sawnwood, which is, typically what we use in all our houses for our rafters and second fixing. That's all very scarce at the moment.
And Paddy, would it be true to say that Darragh McCullough was on recently? He mentioned that we're actually importing timber to keep our sawmills active and to keep a supply for thankfully the construction industry is coming back as we speak, but is that still the scenario?
To be fair here, Ireland have always imported about the same volume annually from Scotland in round timber into our sawmills in Ireland. Right? Now that has happened historically, but it's my belief that the volume that we're importing currently is at least double what we've traditionally imported for the sawmills. At least double. That's not something that would be just known to myself. Now, that would be a commonly known thing out in the industry. So it's frightening to think here that we're actually doing that at the same time when the volume available in our own forests is increasing exponentially because of the planting that farmers principally did in the early 1990s. So, the fact that we're allowing money leave the country for timber to be purchased in Scotland, to be brought in here by ship, to be put through sawmills in Ireland, to be exported back out to the UK, it's a scandal really. It needn't be happening because the farmers in Waterford and Kilkenny and all the other counties across Ireland have these round logs in their forests, but we're not able to mobilise it.
And Paddy, as regards the licensing situation, obviously the harvesting and felling, and as you say, a lot of guys now are 30 years in and both from the thinning ends, and they have the timber there. There's also going to be a knock-on effect with people not able to replant then, so it's a long-term problem that needs to be sorted in the short term, basically.
It needs to be sorted in the short term. This is crucial, and there is an industry hanging on by a thread here, and that's not overstating it. People maybe not realise that there's 12,000 people employed in this industry. It contributes 2.2 billion to the economy each year. This is a substantial industry, and it's based on planting, maintaining, harvesting forests, typically in rural areas in Ireland. At this point, we know there are harvesting machines parked up because they can't get work. Strictly down to the licensing tobacco. I don't want to sound like I'm,
But you're stating the facts. You're stating the facts.
Project Woodland has been started. It has to get a chance.
Yes,
okay. It has to get a chance. But in fairness, along with giving it a chance, the minister must deliver on it because it's gone past the time where talking is enough.
So, Paddy, as you say, the plan is in place, give it time, but what kind of timescale? And as I mentioned earlier in the interview, is extra resources needed in the Department of Agriculture in that forestry section, or is it a case of just letting it go in its own time as such?
I think they need to reform the process.
Okay.
I think it's fair to say, it's my opinion, that the process is broken. They need to change the process. They need to change how business is done. A systems analyst is needed, and somebody with specific expertise on how to run a process is urgently needed. So I'm not convinced it's a resources issue. I don't agree with that. Why are we the only country in Europe with this problem? I'm placing great faith in Project Woodland. Now, Project Woodland needs to be given the chance to put proposals forward which are taken seriously, which are then acted upon. That's going to be the crucial part of it, how quickly they're acted upon. This needs to be acted on quickly here. We cannot be talking about this. We just cannot be talking about this in autumn 2021.
So definitely,
we have to be talking.
Yes. So definitely what you're saying, just to repeat, the plan is there, the talking is over, action is needed and needed now.
Needed now. We need to be having a different conversation in autumn 2021. We need to be talking about the massive availability of roundwood from the private sector in Ireland. That imports of roundwood are now falling and that this is due to the success of Project Woodland. That's the conversation we need to be having in autumn 2021.
Well, as you say,
if we're having the same conversation as we're having today, Project Woodland will have been a failure.
But Paddy, I think you summed it up brilliantly there. As you say, the forest is there, timber is there, but let's go in and start harvesting it. And as you say, the proposal is there. You want to see action. Paddy Bruton of Euroforest Ireland. Paddy, thanks for that update and summary. It's a very serious situation, and let's hope we'll see harvesters on the ground sooner rather than later and try and rescue a very serious situation in the forestry sector. Paddy, thanks for taking our call.
Kieran, thank you very much. Good to talk.
And before I go, a reminder, our livestock marts, of course, they continue weekly online this Saturday morning at Waterford Ross Mart in New Ross. Cattle sales from 9:30, calf sales from 10. While on Monday, Dungarvan Mart, cattle sale from 11 o'clock on Monday morning. And a reminder that the very successful calf sales continue every Thursday from 12 noon, with all sales now online at livestocklive.com. Turning to our farmer markets and country markets, and great to see the farmer and country markets coming back to full bloom again, literally. Great opportunity again to purchase local farm fresh products. This Saturday morning, Waterford Farmers Market in John Roberts Square, while the Stradley Farmers Market this Saturday morning, now trading course outdoors from 10 until 12:30, while on Thursday, Dungarvan Farmers Market, Grattan Square from 9 until 2, while on Friday mornings we've good news. Dungarvan Country Markets are reopening this Friday at the Scoutstown Abbey side from 9 to 1 every Friday from now on, while also good news from the city that Waterford Farmers Market in St Olaf's Hall, Chris Hillard was on to tell us that they'll be reopening on Friday the 9th of May. And finally, to our racing front, good week again for local Waterford connections. Cross Channel wins at Nottingham and Linkfield for Kappa Jock Tom Queally, while back at home, younger brother Declan Roden trained a nice winner at Ballinrobe for well-known farming brothers Diarmuid and Thomas Horgan, while also at Ballinrobe we'd win for the Waterford syndicate Fasty for Fun. At the Curragh, well-known Ardmore breeder Brian Gleeson was back in the winners' enclosure, while we'd wins at Dundalk for Taller trainer Ken Budds and former Cork hurler Mark Landers. And at Tramore last Sunday, Henry de Bromard captured the bumper, where earlier at his home track of Tramore, Henry paraded the champions of Aintree and Cheltenham. What an unbelievable sight, a piece of racing history at our local track. And at Tipperary during the week, the evergreen trainer John Kiley was back in the winners' enclosure. Well, that's my lot for this week's programme. Once again, my thanks to Ollie for all their help in putting this week's programme together. So from myself, Kieran O'Connor, stay safe, keep up the protocol, and hopefully I'll have your company again same time next week.
Farmview with Kieran O'Connor on WLR.
With GlanbiaConnect.com. Thousands of products in the palm of your hand.